I'm Dr. Sophie Messager, and this is the Wisdom Messenger podcast. In this show, I interview pioneers in women's health and personal development about groundbreaking concepts that help women reclaim lost knowledge and restore inner wisdom. By bridging insights from ancient traditions and modern research, we question stale cultural narratives and midwife a new paradigm around birth, life transitions, and women's autonomy. Join me as we delve into stories and studies that empower women to reconnect with their inner voice and live their truth. Tune in as we rediscover what it means to fully trust ourselves and shape our collective future. In this episode, I interview Leonie Dawson. Leonie is an Australian author, entrepreneur, and business coach. She's also the internationally best-selling author of the My Brilliant Year workbooks. I personally prefer to refer to Leonie as a neurodivergent, sweary, rainbow unicorn business goddess. Join us as we explore themes such as mental health, self-care, and embracing authenticity. Listening to Leonie's story is a masterclass in prioritizing your well-being, embracing your multi-passions, and overcoming societal conditioning to live your most authentic life. So welcome to this episode of the Wisdom Messenger, and today I'm incredibly excited to be hosting Leonie Dawson. And whilst I'll ask Leonie to introduce herself in a moment, I tend to describe you, Leonie, as a unicorn, rainbow, sweary business goddess. And I don't like the idea of like going through, Leonie does this, Leonie does that, and describing you in a sort of more, formal way, because I think it doesn't really give the flavor of who you really are. So I thought, why don't you tell us yourself who you really are?
Being the like rainbow fairy unicorn goddess works for me really nicely. And how that shows in the world is I write books where you can set, like, they're very colorful books where you can set your goals for the year in advance in your life and your business. And I make a lot of courses about a whole lot of things, including teaching business and marketing to creatives and hippies. And then I just fold up everything I do into my Brilliant Business Life Academy, which is where I get to help 5,000 people do business and life their way and make it awesome and abundant and delicious. So anything that comes my way, I like to have fun with it, really.
Mm. And do you want to tell us a bit about how you got there, your a bit of potted history of your life and how you got into this
Mm.
very broad things that you put out into the world?
Yeah, I really wanted to be an artist or a writer or a poet or somebody who changed the world from a very young age. I think I was like maybe kindergarten when I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I come from cattle farmers. My parents are farmers and they're very pragmatic. And they were like, no, you're not doing that because there's no money in that. And I said, okay. And as much as I really wanted a creative career, my parents had told me that I couldn't do it because you wouldn't earn any money. And so I thought, well, second best option then for me would be to become Prime Minister of Australia. Because it's just how my brain works. It's like, well, I didn't get what I really want to do. So I might as well just set an enormous goal for myself. So I ran after that goal. And when I was 20, I moved to Canberra, which is like the Washington, D.C. of Australia. And I had incredible experiences. I got to work in Parliament House and I got to meet a lot of ministers and work in their offices. And it was mind-boggling, such an experience for such a young person to like, how did they let me in there? Like, shouldn't security be higher? And really quickly realized in that process as well, like, oh, this is fascinating and these people work incredibly hard. And I also can't imagine doing this for the rest of my life. they weren't able to keep their sensitivity in that job, just because there's so much thrown their way in terms of people's opinions and, working with all of their colleagues, and it didn't matter what side of politics they were on. Like they had to have a really thick hide and they had to work extremely long hours. And I thought, I'm going to lose an essential part of myself in that process, and I'm not going to be able to enact the change that I want to see.
Mm.
So um, I was
How old were you at the time?
I was probably 22 by the time I'd made that
Pretty
decision.
amazing that you already knew that it wasn't going to allow you to do what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I just seemed to be somebody who knew really quickly what I wanted, and so I just raced after it, and then very quickly after that realized like, ooh, this isn't going to work for me.
Mm.
Um, and during that whole process of working for the Australian government, and I was building up I was like doing blogging on the side, and because that had just kind of come out into the world, which was very exciting for me. And um, I was running like spiritual retreats, and I had my first art exhibition, and I sold art at markets, and I did tarot card reading, like anything that I was excited about, I'd try it. And um, I was still doing part-time study at university while also working full-time, while also doing this on the side. And um, I knew I knew around that like 22 point, like, okay, I want to try and work out a way to make money from the things I really, really love. And I'm going to have to work out how to make that happen. And I couldn't work out how to like make the numbers work, like how many art prints I would need to sell in order to be able to live off that money. And instead of giving up, which I think a lot of people do, I'm really grateful that my brain was like, well, there's just things I don't know yet. And I just haven't developed any business or marketing muscles at all because I haven't like practiced on them. And there must just be there must be keys to this success that other people know that I don't yet know, but I can learn it because I'm smart and I'm capable and I've got this and this is what I want. So that's when I like threw myself into learning about business and marketing and testing it out in my little tiny baby creative business. And uh, it worked. I learned everything, I applied everything, and started like the business started just growing and growing and growing, and getting it to the point where it was six figures. And by that time, I left the Australian government and had a baby, and it's been, I don't know how many years since then, 14, 15 years since I've been full time. And my husband, when we had our baby, I was able to retire him from the Australian government as well. And so we've been able to just raise our kids together and in a very organic fashion. And I'm very grateful for it.
Oh, pretty amazing stuff. One of the things
It's
I
been,
do, one of the things I
oh,
do
it just,
really like about how you share, that you're very direct, like very, like you don't pretend, and how you
mm,
also, I'd like us maybe you can tell us a bit more about that, how you prioritize your family and your work-life balance, and how you did try, I know, having a big team and realizing that managing people really wasn't for you, and how you can make it all happen without working yourself into the ground. That's something really to aspire to, because there's a lot of us out there, especially when we start in our solopreneur journeys, who feel to earn more, you have to work more. Do you see what I mean? The whole,
mm,
like almost like it's a direct link between if you earn 20,000 and to earn 40,000, you're going to have to work twice as many hours. So can you tell
completely.
us a bit how you managed to make it work
Sure.
with like a very, very small amount? Like I was reading an old blog of yours, well, just before the interview, there's something from 2014 where you were describing in a blog, like what you did in your typical week. Do you want
Yeah,
to tell us a
nice.
bit about that?
Sure. So for me, I feel really grateful that, I spent a lot of time building up, like a lot of years building up my business on the side and, trying out all the different things and seeing what worked. And it was, I had my full-time job and I couldn't devote like full-time hours to working out the whole business thing. It had to happen at the side of the rest of my life. I'm also somebody who's quite financially risk adverse. I seem like I have a very like risk friendly personality, and in some levels I do, but not financially. I don't. I'm quite conservative financially. I like to accumulate and have a nest egg and not like make rash financial decisions. So, I'm very grateful that I didn't have the luxury of having full-time, like all of my time, all the days in order to grow my business. And instead, I really had to get clear on what were the big revenue producers and what weren't. And, I remember when the 4 Hour Work Week came out by Timothy Ferriss back in the olden days of 2007, I think it was. And I just read it like and really took it on. I was like, okay, well, he done it in 4 hours a week. I can totally do it in like 10-ish. And I didn't leave my government job until I had my first daughter. And I had the blessing of having a very sensitive baby who didn't sleep. And I say that with wryness in that, like, of course, it was very challenging having a baby who doesn't sleep and is very sensitive to the world like that. But it meant that my capacity to work was even more reduced. And so, like, it was just tiny slivers of time. And by that point, I was a solo breadwinner for our family. We'd taken this, fairly risky thing to leave the government and craft a new life. And I didn't want to just hand my kid over to to daycare. That it wasn't something that I wanted to do at all. One of my biggest priorities was to be a very, very present parent. I also breastfed for 2.5 years with my first kid. So I only had very small portions of time. And so that was where I really had to double down on the ideas of in the 4 Hour Work Week in terms of what's the really, really important tasks and what is not. The things that aren't important and aren't revenue producing need to be just killed off. And I have had some big lessons in terms of the team front. So I started off doing it all by myself. By the time I left, I had a part-time assistant virtually who just did a couple of hours a month. And then that grew over time. And as my business grew with like more busyness and so much more sales, and it got up to I think $2.8 million one year. I had to add more and more staff to that situation. I think we're at over 20 plus staff at a certain point, and discovered in that process, like, oh, I really hate this. I actually hate spending all my time managing people. And when you have more people to manage, you have to work longer hours. It's just how it is. Like you think it's such an ass backwards thing. You think, well, no, they're going to like take all of the workload off me, so I won't have to work as much. Like it's just not the case. And more people, you have more people drama and more fires to put out and more logistics to manage. So once my time started like sneaking up, and I think it was like maybe 25 hours a week, and I've like that still doesn't seem like a lot, but by that point I had a a toddler and a 6-year-old, and it just felt like the business was taking me away from them, and it was never why I wanted to set up the business. And I was sort of careening, like just being so into parenting, and then like boom to my business, and then managing all these people. And I was like, I hate this so much. I just want to create. I just want to teach. I just want to do the thing that I love doing in the world. And now I have to manage staff. Like I'm still in the public service. Like, yuck, not for me. So after a period of time, I decided it was time to right-size my business back to a point where it felt really good for me and for really good for my family again, so that it wasn't sucking up so much of my time and energy. So over the space of a couple of years, when people would leave, I didn't replace them. Unfortunately, some people had to be fired because they weren't the right fit. And I went back to just having one assistant, and it feels like that's a pretty sweet spot for me. And I'll never, ever, ever regret prioritizing my kids and my husband over the pursuit of more, especially when I actually made higher profit margins when I have a smaller business, like a smaller team, like I can, when you have that higher revenue amount, your profit margin is going to be so much less than what it was. And so there's been some years with one assistant where I've been able to make more than that $2.8 million revenue year just on the profit margin front. So that's exciting. But even if that money hadn't happened like that, I still won't regret that I remember just the moment of looking at my kids and going, I choose them. Like I need to be around them.
And again, I find it fascinating the same way as, you recognize that politics wasn't for you. You clearly were very good at recognizing that running a big team of people wasn't giving you what you wanted. When people often get sucked the other way, get sucked in the career ladder thing and kind of almost have their self-worth attached to their title and the number of people reporting to them and all that kind of shit, and I think it's quite revolutionary to be able to be like, no, actually, this is not for me. And then one of the things I'd like to touch on, alongside that is I'm very aware that, you probably were aware of it before you got diagnosed as a UDHD. So that's ADHD and autism together. When did you get diagnosed again? Like 3 or 4 years ago?
That was that was the official diagnosis, but I self-diagnosed, I think maybe 2013 or something. So it's been about 10 years of
Yeah.
self-diagnosis.
Because one of the things for me, I got diagnosed with ADHD a year ago, and one of the things where it helped me understand myself a lot better, I self-diagnosed a couple of years before that, but is finally understanding the way my energy does this massive ups and down thing. And I'd be curious to hear your experience of that. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have the same and probably aren't aware of the fact that what I realize, you use the term that people often use for ADHD, which is having a Ferrari brain, and how you need more pit stops and more, and you more fuel and more pit stop than somebody who has like a lesser power hungry car, but you can't go as fast. But then it's like you can only go fast in short bursts. That's what I've noticed. What happens with like the how you get periods of doing in 3 hours what would take people a week, but then you can't maintain that. It has to be accepting. The biggest journey for me has been to be accepting of understanding why people keep saying, how do you do all that? And I'm like, what are you talking about? But also accepting of the high will be followed by crashes, and you can ride the high, the high. Sorry, I was always thinking about you ride the wild donkey thing, and that's what I've got in my mind. As in like, oh, you have to accept that if you do that, you get to pay the price. You get to have the fantastic hyper focus, hyper productive time, and then you also get to have times where people don't usually see you do that, which is why I love that you share that online, that you have times where you feel like shit and you can only be horizontal and you can't share yourself to the world because it's like either all the way up or not nothing at all.
Totally. And you're like, I think that's why when I was like diagnosed, went through the official diagnosis process, I was like, can you check for like bipolar or something, because like the waves are, you know, what's that about? And I didn't have it. I just had ADHD, which is um, enough anyway. But to recognize that it is cyclical and my energy burns at a faster rate, and it means I need a lot more downtime. Like obviously, like I'm in bed right now, doing this. So wherever I can retreat to bed, I will do that. And there's, you know, some studies that show that by going horizontal, it helps to like reset the neurodivergence nervous system. So I like pre-game everything now. So when I'm overstimulated, or when I need to like go out into the world and do something which is quite stimulating, then I will make sure that I get in like 30 minutes to an hour, like lay down time before I go do that, knowing that I will probably need to do some more when I get home. And it's just like
Mm.
cushioning around it. And all of these like little systems and rules I have for myself in terms of like limiting the amount of work hours that I work, and not working on weekends, and making sure that I fill up my well, and making sure that every single weekend I have solo mama retreats where I just lay in bed and read books for hours on end, or I read books in the bath. Um, those things are to prevent burnout. So a lot of neurodivergent folk will um, you know, because our energy is so susceptible to the ups and downs. And if you keep on ignoring that and not building enough cushioning to keep the well like filled, to keep adding, you know, to your bank account so you're not in deficit, you know, if you get to a point where you've taken out too much energy and not put enough in, then you're overdrawn, you're bankrupt energetically. And that's when you get into burnout experiences. And I've been through burnout experiences by pushing too hard, and it's not something that I want to repeat anytime
Mm.
soon. And I think the blessing of burnout for me is like it's like a train coming off in the distance, and you can hear it starting to choo-choo for you, you know, like it's like, oh, the valley. I can hear the train coming, and starting to put things in place to either like stop the train before it hits you, or if it's going to hit you, like try and slow it down a little
Yeah.
bit so it's not going to hit you as like critically. So I'm grateful for the experience of learning when the train is coming and building in some systems in my life. And, you know, my husband is also fully aware of how easily I burn out. And so when I start booking my calendar out with quite a lot of stuff, or I'm thinking of doing something, he's like, I'm not sure about that. Like that you are going to burn out, and you're going to be exhausted, and you're going to be cranky, and then you're going to be in bed for weeks. And like,
Yeah.
that's not going to be helpful. So I appreciate when I've got like other people on my team with me looking for the situations where I'm going to tax my energy way too much.
Did you ever have guilt around resting?
Have kids around while I'm
Like,
resting, do you mean?
did you ever find yourself resisting the rest because we live in a culture that glorifies busy,
Mm,
and that a lot of people, and
mm,
especially true for women,
mm,
struggle to like give themselves permission to rest. I know I have, that stuff you talk about. I was listening the other day to your webinar on running a business when you're neurodivergent, and I was listening to that whilst making a drum, so it's perfect in my garden, and I was listening to you talking about our horizontal stuff and the evidence that shows that neurodivergent people need horizontal time. And
mm,
I was noticing that, it's only like literally the last year that I've started to lean into that instead of resisting it, because that stuff you're talking about, the burnout, I've had too. And I know lots and lots of people. Like, it's often that people don't actually give themselves the permission to rest until their body gives them the choice, because there's so
mm.
much of our world that is about keep going at
Yeah.
all costs, and how did you ever experience that type of guilt around rest, and that type of almost like it's not safe to rest? Did you ever experience that?
Yeah. And for me, like before I had kids, I was a really good rester. Like very just so cool in myself. Um, and I think um, I wasn't somebody that wanted to replicate the stories of my female ancestors, like my mom and, grandmothers and things like that. And bless them, I know they were doing exactly what they felt like they needed to do at that time. But, their life was work, hard, 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 no self-care. And I remember my mentor, Hiraboga, at one point said to me, Leonie, like all self-care is extreme self-care to you because you were modeled no self-care and like no rest in your family. So of course it's going to feel really uncomfortable to you.
Mm.
And of course you'll wonder like, why do I need all of this like self-care and rest? Like disgusting. That's like I should just be able to carry on. Um, and it was really only after I had kids that social conditioning really kicked in for me. And I really struggled with the idea that I needed rest. And it was, I needed a lot of um, mentoring and healing around it in order to allow myself it because um, it was like this soul contract dropped in that was like, right, well, you are a mother, and you know what mothers do, they sacrifice above all else, they're the martyrs, and you just have to keep on running and you don't look after yourself in this process. And it was definitely like the modeling that I'd had from my female ancestors. And also like there was still some, it wasn't just a modeling of it, but there was definitely still some judgment from my family uh, in me looking after myself as a mother and not doing it exactly the same way as my mother had done it.
Yeah.
And so that was really difficult to move through. I'm glad I had the support of um, my therapist and Hiraboga to help me like move through that because it was so sticky. It was so
Yeah.
difficult to
Yeah.
move through it and to start crafting how I wanted to be a mother.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like I didn't feel like I had another choice because I could keep going with my patterns of like what I thought it meant to be a mum.
Yeah.
But by that point, I developed such excruciating postnatal depression and anxiety and, incredible levels of burnout from trying to live up to this image, this idea. And it wasn't for me, it wasn't for my brain, it wasn't for my body, and it also wasn't for my kid either, because my kid was different
Yeah.
from perhaps some of my, like what my female ancestors had experienced in their kids. So, starting to build in some of my little rules around self-care. And that's when Solo Mama Retreat came very, very handy. So really recognizing on weekend afternoons, I needed to give up the idea of like being, the almighty Earth Mother who's, there for everything and
Always
just feel
smiling,
like my,
always. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like,
always like serene. You know, I call her like the image I have in my mind is somebody that looks like the Mona Lisa.
oh yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the selfless mother never loses her shit, always
Uh-huh.
goddess in the home and all that kind of bollocks that we are putting
Uh-huh.
onto ourselves that we don't even know we are
Yes.
putting onto ourselves. Of
And then when you have a
like,
mother
and because
who
it's not
has
conscious,
belief
right?
that,
Yeah,
yeah, completely. And like I had, like I would have, like I went through an awful time. So I was the first daughter to have, um, to have kids in my family. I'm one of five, and um, just getting fed just like absolute Mona Lisa nonsense from my own mother saying, well, I just don't understand why anybody would have postnatal depression and anxiety, because every single moment with children is pure joy. And it's very, very sad if you can't see that.
Talk about
And
like making you feel even worse, right?
right, like, oh, it's so bad. Like this doesn't work for me at all. Like I'm suffering. And also it's bullshit. It is absolute bullshit to have that lie because I remember my own childhood. That wasn't true.
Yeah.
Like I remember like things get hard and that's okay. It's okay to tell the truth. But sometimes things are hard. They're really, really hard. And that yes, we can love our children. Yes, we can enjoy them. But no, we don't have to center our whole soul existence around it, And
I was thinking
um,
of Glennon Doyle. Don't know if you've
oh,
read. I love
mm,
Untamed, but Glennon Doyle had a blog post called Don't Carpe Diem" that went viral, so like 10 years ago or something, where she was talking about that old women coming at her in the supermarket going, "Enjoy every moment, it's wonderful, they grow so fast." And she was like, yeah, and during the day she was using like Chronos time and something else time, where she was saying during the day you have these moments of utter glory with your kids, and then you have also like moments of horror side by
mm,
side, um, all
yes,
the time. And the whole bullshit of
completely.
pretending that this doesn't happen. Yeah, that stuff we were
Yeah,
talking about, the energy. When I used to teach antenatal classes, I would say, this is your life before kids, and this is your life after kids. It just goes,
exactly.
the amplitude of the ups and down is like multiplied. Yeah.
Yeah, it hits so much harder. It hits so much harder. So doing things like the solo mama retreats for like laying in bed on weekend afternoons, giving up the idea that I need to be the core piece of our family to keep everything running. And I think it was a real blessing because when I gave up that, then my husband could develop his own
Mm.
connection more with the kids because as much as he's been around, like he has been present, he's just like, it sucks that I don't have boobs because for whatever reason, they're going for the boob giver,
Yeah.
and especially, we did breastfeed our kids, but even after the breastfeeding finishes, there's something like there's just like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
boob person, she will
And him
she
with
will
his useless nipples.
exactly right. And so like he got to like start developing his own like rhythm with the kids as well. Um and I'm really grateful for that. And so like, for it's probably been 10 years or more of them, they would play Minecraft together or Stardew Valley and like build these worlds. And yes, it's different from what I do with my kids, but they get so much joy and creativity and lessons out of that as well. And that connection time and I get to refill my well. And now it's just like a known thing in my family. So if I'm starting to get cranky or overstimulated, my kids will go, Mum, why don't you just go read a book? You sound like you're overstimulated and you probably just need some downtime. And like they will completely call me out if I'm being a bitch,
Yeah.
like they'll
Yeah.
just go, ew, like I don't like this. This isn't us. Go have a lay down. And my husband's the same. He's like, you're turning into a real Sharon. That's what we call it in my house. Is if I'm being a real bitch and
As
being a
opposed to
cranky
being a
cow.
Karen.
Yeah, yeah,
You turn
yeah,
into
exactly.
Sharon.
Sharon's a shouter. Sharon's a yelly person, and that's not how I like to parent.
Yeah.
And so we know when I like veer off into territory, um, that doesn't feel right, then it's time for bed. And also, I know that if I don't do it on a weekend, then I will be more of a Sharon of a parent for the rest of the week because I just haven't taken that that time to regulate myself. So we all know that this is what's best for me.
Yeah. Wonderful. I'm just wondering if you might want to tell us a bit more about, you know, I know you're a multi-passionate person,
Mm,
and you often tell people that they can do all the things, because one of the things you don't do in your business is kind of pigeonhole yourself into one narrow area of focus. And
Mm.
would you want to tell us a bit? Because I know there's a lot of people who are into heart-centered businesses who are also multi-passionate,
Mm.
and who feel that they have to somehow find a hat or a title that covers all of that, and kind of think
Mm.
they have to make themselves a narrow version of themselves. And what I do
Yeah.
love about the way you run your business is it's very colorful and very varied in its offerings. And I just would like us, if you could tell us a bit more about how you,
Sure.
how you manage that for yourself, and then B, what you would say to people who are where you were before you understood that you could embrace all of that and grow it.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not somebody who strategically niched in terms of like who I'm going to serve and what's the one message, the one subject I'm going to talk about. I think if I had to do that, I wouldn't, have a creative career that's now been going for 20 plus years, like it's not possible. And instead I embrace that I have different passions and different interests and I can lace them into my business. In lots and lots of different ways. So, I've created over 200 workshops on really varied subjects now, from, creating digital art to writing books to, um, selling e-courses and, taking care of your money, all that stuff. Anything that I am passionate about, that I've learned a lot about, and that I want to share with the world, I will make stuff around. And the thing is with being multi-passionate is you absolutely can do it, but you can't do absolutely everything all at once as you start. Like what you need to do, like at any certain point in time, it's not like I'm working on 200 courses all at the same time. Like I have these cycles. So you decide on the first project that you're going to work on, the first thing that you're going to offer to the world, and you get it done, you complete the cycle, you share it with the world, and you try and start, if you want to make it commercial, then, you start making money from it. And also like not just like giving up on um the not just like throwing out your work into the world and go, well, it didn't sell, therefore I just move on to onto the next thing. When in reality, you need also to learn how to do marketing and sales of that product in order to create a vessel for all your gifts to share them with the world and start receiving abundance back for them. And here's the beauty of like learning about sales and marketing. It's not like you have to learn about sales and marketing every single time you go to like sell something. All you need to do is like reuse the same things that have worked for you in the past. You can try out new ones as you go, but it's not like you don't have to like relearn the wheel again. So I think it's really important to like learn those essential business skills, because that is what will bring in the abundance for you. And I know that so many people who are like me, like creatives and hippies, they're just like, but I don't want to do any of the selling. I just want to like create and share it with the world.
Marketing
And
is
that's
your
all.
key. I
Yes.
think one of the big problems, that's what I discovered in my journey, is that there's a lot of people out there who market in a very, what I call, old fashioned, like, so it's things that I think should belong to the past, where they market by manipulative techniques. And I'm pretty sure that authenticity and integrity are top, so some of your top values, right? And when you're that kind of person and you're heart-centered business and you're happy, that feels absolutely disgusting and yucky. So you want to tell us a bit more about that as well, maybe for people who are still thinking that marketing is
Mm.
yucky.
Yeah. Like you get to market in a way that works for you and for your heart and for your people. It does mean that you're still going to have to like push out past your comfort zone. And I know people are like, "No, in my comfort zone. There are absolutely so many ways that you can sell and market well in a way that's in alignment and in integrity and wholehearted and of the greatest service to you and to your client. And it's still going to take work and it's still going to take effort. And you still have to do things that make you feel uncomfortable because you actually have to like put yourself out there. And that's going to trigger some stories of worthiness usually, or resistance, or wanting to stay small in some way, or just like you just can't be fucked. You don't want to, because it's not as fun as making the thing. But if
Mm.
you want to make money from your gift and make it into a sustainable business, it's just part of doing business. You can still do it in a way that's beautiful and aligned to you, but it's still going to take work. It gets easier as it goes along. So much easier. Like I don't even really think about sales and marketing now. It just gets farted out because I've done it so many times now. And then once you've completed that cycle of earning some money from it, then you can start adding more things into your stable. But you have to choose like the next one idea, completing it, finishing it, selling it in the world before you then move on to the next idea. Like so many times creatives will come to me and be like, oh, I'm working on 6 courses at the moment. I've got all these ideas. And I'm like, that is great. That's incredible. Um, and all you need to do right now is just choose one. You just need to choose one to finish. You need to like get into the habit of finishing it, selling it, sharing it with the world, and then you get to have the next one. It's like you can have all of the ice creams under the sun, but you're gonna have to choose one cone to eat first. Because otherwise you just like and they're all melting and it's like just a shit show.
And you haven't found yourself. That thing that you said, because I heard you say that years ago. I hear that in my head when I want to go, because sideways to something else. Because one of the thing, especially neurodivergent folks often have, is get very excited by the beginning of the thing, and
Exactly.
then the finishing of the thing is less exciting, right?
Completely.
Do you find that this is
Completely.
something you have to? That
It's building a muscle for it.
yeah,
It really is. And also recognizing the energy cycle of a project as well. So when the idea is forming and when you just start working on it, it's very, very exciting. There's lots and lots of like energy in it.
yeah,
And from like say like 20% right through to 100%, it can be a bit of a slog.
yeah,
And you can build in practices to help you stay that slog. One of the things that I do as a neurodivergent person is giving myself a shorter deadline. So instead of saying you're going to write a book in a year, I teach finish your book in 40 days or
yeah,
finish your course in 40 days. Because if you give yourself a shorter, sharper deadline, there's that urgency. And you just have to keep moving through like
yeah.
resistances
And
and just
telling people that you're going to like telling people like I now release courses. I'm doing this workshop in 2 weeks, and I got to do it. But then it's exciting because you've promised to other. I don't know about you, but I find it much easier to be externally motivated.
exactly.
And I
Exactly. And
notice
like, have you read The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin?
that rings a bell. I think I might have it somewhere there. Yeah, no,
It's
actually,
like,
it's something I haven't finished. Like, I don't know about you, but I often start several books at the same time and kind of
oh, you're right. Yeah. It,
yeah,
it completely about that. So like people like you and me would be classified as obligers under her system,
yeah,
which is motivated by external deadlines or
yeah,
like owing somebody else something. And it's a fairly significant population, like percent of the population who are obligers.
yeah,
So that's why, having those accountability buddies or telling the world that you're going to put something out is enormously motivating. And so you get it, like you go through the birth process of getting a
yeah,
project out into the world. Like obviously, like when you go through birth, like not every moment is pure bliss and pure
no,
joy. Like there is stuff that's just this friggin' hard work and you don't want to do it anymore. And it just needs to happen
yeah,
anyway. And that's how I feel about creative projects. And you also get like this euphoric burst of energy after you finish as well, and you start, it gives you that much more energy to do the next project,
Mm.
because you get this enormous, like, so at the start of the project you get a huge like energy burst,
Yeah.
and then it's like,
Yeah.
and then you get to the end of the project and you get this huge like dopamine burst again, and you can use that to fuel like the next project. So it just becomes easier and easier and easier to put
Yeah.
things out the more you get into that habit of it, and you build up that muscle of finishing.
Mm. Yeah. And what would you say to like people who struggled with self-doubt, and like all the people who are like being blocked up by, because I know that one of the things I do love about your work is how encouraging you are,
Mm.
to even regardless of where people are in their business journey. What
Mm.
what would you say to people who are just starting, people who feel they're not good enough, they don't want to put themselves out there, people who are just like worried that somebody like to tell you, it's a very brief story. A friend of mine said, "Oh, there's no point me writing this book because somebody much more famous just wrote a book," and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's two like your voice
Mm.
and their voice,
Mm.
two different stories."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important. Like, our voices, we're the only ones who can share our story and our experience and our wisdom and our unique perspective. And I always encourage people to stop thinking about ourselves and thinking about the people who actually need their work and who are suffering without it. That can be hugely helpful. To recognize that when you share something with the world, when you create something, it heals the hands it moves through first. So your work is going to go out and it's going to heal other people, but first it's going to heal you in the
Mm.
process of you creating it. I am grateful for every single workshop and book and artwork and journal page I've ever created, because it has healed a part of me and it's made me bigger and bolder and braver, and opened me up that much more by going through that process
Say that
for
again. The
years.
first, it heals the hand that produces. Is that what? Is that the
It
expression?
heals the hand that it moves through first.
Wow.
So, when you create, your when you put it out into the world, it's moving through your hand first.
Yeah.
So it heals the hand it moves through first. So it blesses you first. So you just creating and completing anything is a massive healing miracle for you.
Mhm.
And it will help others as well.
Yeah.
But the real blessing is how much it heals you. Um, Also, here's what I know is that if you think about the people who have less imposter syndrome, it's usually straight white men. They think they own the earth, you
Yeah.
know? And in the immortal words of Schmidt from New Girl, as he would say, like, a white man? No, like, we cannot have just one specific part of the population who feels brave enough and entitled enough to share their gifts and their wisdom with the world, because we are in a dearth of hearing from women, from Black, Indigenous people of color, from the LGBTQIA plus community, um, people with less privilege. And um, interestingly, there's more research coming out that shows that imposter syndrome is scientifically, the research shows that it is experienced more by people with less privilege.
Yeah.
So therefore, we know that it is an external condition, and it is a symbol of the patriarchy. It's a symbol of oppression, of colonialism, because of course it's going to work really, really well for those systems if people who aren't the dominant force um, don't try and share their
Yeah.
stuff with the world. So that makes me feel really ragey when I think about that. And then I can use that rage. I'm like,
Yeah.
do I really want to not share my work with the world because I have been conditioned by the external world to second guess myself to prevent people like me? from saying, like, from doing this. Like, fuck no. That can get fucked. That makes me just so much more motivated to share my voice with the world. That, like, I love a little bit of like revenge mode of action. It does actually thrill me as a Scorpio. Like, oh, I'll take this. I'll let it burn inside me. And lastly, I just think it's unnatural for us to second guess ourselves. I don't believe that we were born. Like, I don't believe that, like, God, Great Spirit, all that is, created us and was like, you know what? There is so much that I have given you, so much beauty. And then I just want you to, like, spend the rest of your life not enjoying it because you're second guessing it.
Yeah.
That does not seem like a holy and divine mission to me. That does not seem like it makes sense, especially when we recognize the fact that we are just mammals. Are all the other mammals out there second guessing themselves? Like, I talk about the zebra, like, is the zebra out there going, oh, if only like this one stripe would be thinner, then I would be worthy, then I would be lovable, then I could enjoy this moment. Like, the zebra is not doing that. The zebra's like, I'm a motherfucking zebra. I am here. I'm enjoying this like beam of sunlight. I'm eating this grass. Like, I am fucking nailing this. And so I just aim to be the zebra because that's the more natural state of being. And it's also just way more fun to be like that than to spend my life with my head up my own asshole, second guessing myself.
Yeah. Yeah, be a motherfucking liberal. I think
Exactly.
that's the
Exactly.
summary
Precisely.
of it all. Yeah. And I remember also in one of the live call I attended with you, you said you only need to know 10 or 20% more than people to help them. I don't know if I think it might have been you talking about knitting as an example. If you know how to knit, you can help someone who's never knitted, even if I only learned to knit yesterday. You can help someone
Mhm.
who's never knitted, and you know, again, this idea that you have to have 3 PhDs in something before you can start sharing it with the world. Like you have, in fact, I also noticed that people who are themselves in the process that they're trying to overcome are often more relatable.
Mm. Mm.
That stuff you were talking about healing earlier, we never like always it's an ever-going process, you know. It's always, it's not like you're healed, you know. For years I used to think,
Mm.
if I find the right technique, the right thing, I will be always happy, everything will be fine. And then realizing that it's like a process, but then you can help other people who are a little bit less further along than
Completely.
you are in the healing process. And I
Mm.
also, you know, really appreciate how much you talk about how much openness and vulnerability you share on social media about your own mental health struggles,
Mm.
and the fact that you can be wildly successful and have mental health struggles. And
Completely.
again, have you noticed how categorized our world is? Like you're either this or that. You know, like if you're successful, you're always happy, right?
Mm.
And I just wondered if you had any wisdom to share with our listeners about, you know, running a business and having, you know, I know you have a physical health struggle as
Mm.
well as mental health struggle, but if we stick to the sort of challenge of having, just as well as we were talking about physical energy going up and down earlier, how do you manage a business and know that you're going to have ups and downs in your mental health as well?
Mm. You know, for me, like, I just don't think it's something that I need to rage against. Like, I just, like, I don't, you know, I come from a very large family. Like, I come from a small town, um and my parents had lots of siblings and their parents had lots of siblings, and they all stayed in the same small town. So I guess I was in a rare position in that I know you know, a very large amount of my family, and it's a very large family, you know, just there's just hundreds. Um and here's what I know is that, like, physically, my people are pretty strong in their bodies in lots of ways. You know, it's a little bit, I don't know, I think it's somewhat of a blue zone in that, you know, a lot of people live into their 90s or 100s, which is
Yeah.
incredible, and very strong physically. But mentally, there's some little worms in the system, and that's okay. It's like I'm not gonna like why would I feel any shame about that? It's like saying, oh, you know, like diabetes runs in my family,
Yeah.
like bipolar runs in my family, like people with you know, quite severe depressive episodes run in my family. Like I'm not gonna have any upset about that. And people with diabetes, they just manage it through their lifestyle and
Yeah.
they with
Nobody said
medication.
to them, have you tried making more insulin?
That's right. This is what it is, you know, and that's okay. And so I am predisposed to having depressive episodes, like, I don't know, 95% of my very large extended family, you know. So whatever I can do to build in to keep myself safe and to keep my body thrive and my body, and like I classify my body as my physical health, like sorry, I classify my brain as my physical health. Like
Yeah.
mental health comes from your brain, it is still physical
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
It's chemical stuff happening, and our body is totally correlated into
Yeah.
that. So whatever I can do to look after this whole ecosystem, great. And that means that Um, for me, I'll likely be on a antidepressant medication for the rest of my life to uh, keep keep me on the straight and narrow. And that's totally okay. I'm very comfortable with that. Like just as if I had diabetes, I'd be comfortable taking on diabetes medication. It is what it is, you know. And then the lifestyle stuff in terms of working out what my triggers are, making sure that I have good like mental health support. And interestingly, I'll add this in before we finish up, but doing cognitive behavioral therapy is not necessarily the best option for neurodivergent people. And
So I'm
it
making
can
a
make,
face because here in the UK, when you go to the like the health system, the NHS, like any mental health problem, CBT, magic bullet,
yes, yeah,
CBT. And my husband's a therapist, and he's like, going
yeah,
because
yeah.
CBT has its place for some people, but because that's the only it's quantifiable, so the system likes it. Yeah.
Yes, completely. And it's if it makes you feel worse, then don't do it. And it made me feel worse. So you have to like find your own gold standard.
Yeah.
And some of it is not going to be like what it looks like for other people. So for people who are neurodivergent, sometimes people find it's much better to do somatic therapy or body work or equine therapy or acceptance and compassion therapy and like very like it's more eclectic. And so
Yeah.
you get to create your own gold standard. So that's how I manage that. Like it's just managing my whole body as an ecosystem and the mental health part of it. And I will talk about it because like I'm not gonna like lie about if I had diabetes. Like I'm gonna tell people. I don't see like why I should have any shame for it.
So before we finish, and I want to blow your trumpet for your academy because I'm in your academy, and you've got like God knows how many courses in there. I've not even counted. Like how many courses are in there?
There's over 100 now.
Wow. So it used to be that I know because I did join some of your courses. I think I bought 3 of your courses when they were like $99 each, and now you
Mm,
get like the whole blooming whole singing, all dancing panoply of everything for that's probably a French word for
I
two
like
hundred
Panoply though. I
two
use
hundred
it. Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
200
like one
bucks a
nine
year.
nine no US dollars, sorry, not
US
Australian
dollars, yeah,
dollars.
because
And you keep adding more stuff to there, so it's a ridiculous still of a thing. And then you get to attend live calls where you get to hear your gorgeous unicorn rainbow goddess sweary self telling people to fucking do their course.
it's the best
And
fun, honestly.
yeah,
I can't believe I get to do this as a job. What a treat.
and just to finish, so if you want to tell people where they can find you, Leonie.
the best bet is always on my website, leoniedawson.com. I have a free shit page, and there's so much free shit on there. And go find something that takes your fancy. And if you like podcasts, I also have a podcast called Leonie Dawson Refuses to be Categorized.
Do you
Because
still
I
do the
totally,
jingle with your mouth?
yeah, always,
Because
100%.
I
Like, I'm
tell you, the
never
one
getting out
thing
of it.
that was so liberating for me was when I started listening to your podcast, and I was like, this woman who's like a multi-million business owner, and she records a podcast in a car on a phone, was making boop 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 that jingle with her mouth, and I was like, wow, there's hope for the rest of us, because again, so many of us get stuck in this idea that you need all this fancy Nancy. I always remember one of my business mentor, when I did my first online course, told me that he'd done all this like beta tester with like recording on his iPhone with like, the free earphones and mic that comes with the iPhone. And then when he went to record in a studio, they all told him they didn't like the video because they looked contrived, because he shot them all in one go. And so, today somebody was saying to me that they want to start a podcast. What equipment should I buy? I'm recording this podcast on the 20 quid Logitech camera that has a microphone on it, and I realize it's just as good as some fancy microphones that I bought. What are you using on your system?
Nothing, just the straight laptop. I just can't be asked.
But yeah, I really recommend people go and listen to your podcast, because it gives so much permission to people when somebody like you gives yourself the permission to not have all the perfection, fancy Nancy, smooth, it all having like I couldn't get over it, frankly, when I first listened to the episode. That you were like making the jingle with your mouth and recording it in your car and saying, I know I should be doing this in a fancy studio, but I ain't got time. So if you want to hear from me, that will be how it will be. Yeah.
And the best part is like lately, like I recorded the podcast in a fancy podcast studio just because I wanted to do it with one of my best friends. And I was like, oh, it's the easiest option. And so we just took musical instruments in there with us, and we just made up the most awful trash as jingles every single time we did the podcast, completely spontaneously. It's horrific to listen to, and it's my favorite thing I've ever made.
Well,
Right, I need to go
thank
chase
you
my
so
kids.
much, Leonie. That was a delight, and I hope more people listen to you and feel inspired and empowered by all your experience and
Bless you.
sharing.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for spending this time with me, and thank you for sharing your light with the world.
Thank you.
All right. Lots of love.